So before I begin, let me just say this. This video will reference the movie Ants. But unfortunately, I was wrong. It's actually the movie A Bug's Life that I should have been referencing. I don't know what it was, but there was like a period a few years ago where every movie was about bugs. You had A Bug's Life, you had an Ants, you had Bee Movie, you had that one Turbo about the snail that could go really fast. I don't know. It was just like it was like the bug period of movies. You have like film noir. You've got got the silent movies, and you also had the bug period of movies. So I say Ants here, but what I mean is A Bug's Life. Enjoy. Hello there. This is AD Robles, and you're listening to AD on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. All right, well, before we begin today, let me just say this. If you have not considered doing so, please consider becoming a Fight Laugh Feast Network club member. Use the show code Robles. That is ROBLES. Use the show code Robles. That is ROBLES to let the boys at the studio know that you appreciate this content in particular. We want to continue making it. We want to dedicate more time to it. And I think that I thank so many of my own patrons and the people that support me on the Fight Laugh Feast Network that you've made it much easier to dedicate more time to this. This is not my primary job. This is not my primary source of income. But I'm able to justify spending more time on the content because of your support. So thank you. If you've not considered doing so, please consider it. Becoming a Fight Laugh Feast Network club member, use the show code Robles, ROBLES. You get access to a lot of special stuff as well, so consider that. Thank you again. Now, I have a topic today that I've been thinking a lot about over the last few years, and it's just a very weird topic, and there's a lot that's happened, right? There's a lot that's happened, a lot of like shocking events. And one of the things that I've noticed is oftentimes when there's like a big news story, very quickly, and sometimes like right away, there's stuff that doesn't quite add up about the story. Like there's things that are left out, or there's things that were fabricated, or there's just a lot that stinks in a lot of the major news stories. And I've often wondered, well, what is that all about? Why is that? Why is that? And I was talking to my brother today, actually, about the movie The Truman Show. And one of the ways that they controlled Truman, if you've seen the movie The Truman Show, I've actually never watched it, so I'm going to watch it. My brother told me that one of the ways, and I've seen synopsises and stuff like that, one of the ways they controlled Truman, though, is that they've kind of inserted different traumatic events into his life to sort of control his behavior, to kind of keep him in sort of a mental prison. And I think this is very clearly going on this day in these days. One of the ways that I've been thinking about this is often people will encourage me on YouTube or in private messages, and they'll say, "AD, I'm so grateful that we've got a brother that's got a little bit of courage and stuff like that." And I appreciate those comments, guys. I'm grateful that you say that. It helps me. It emboldens me. So keep doing it. You know, if that's how you feel, then please let me know. But sometimes I feel a little embarrassed because sometimes the thing that they say that they're thanking me for, the courage, I don't really find that it's all that courageous. Like if I go into the post office, yesterday, and I just don't wear the mask. I just walk in, engage in my business, walk out, and I'm not wearing the mask. Some people might think that takes a little bit of courage, but I don't really see it that way. For some reason, I'm not plugged into that trauma. You know what I mean? To borrow a term from Kyle Howard. Like the COVID trauma, it worked on me for like a day or two, and then it was over. You know what I mean? I didn't have the trauma anymore. And I just walked, I just go about my business the way I used to. But there's a lot of people, they do have that COVID trauma. Like they hang on every word of Dr. Fauci. They hang on every word of the Birx, whatever her name was, and all of that. And so to them, that's a very courageous thing to do. And I think you don't even have to listen to Fauci to really have this kind of a trauma thing. There's also a lot of people, and I'm not calling anybody out here, but there's also a lot of people that really fear the government. Like they think, oh, how are you going to do that? You're going to get in trouble with the federal police. You're going to get arrested. You're going to get fined. And like they do really fear that. And I get it because like to a certain degree, I fear the governmental authorities and stuff like that. And there's a certain amount of that that's legitimate. Like the Bible says we should fear God. And because we fear God, he's established the government to execute justice and all of that. So there's a certain aspect of that fear that's totally legitimate. But there's also an aspect of that that's totally illegitimate. Like, you're driving. The other day I was driving, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't drinking and driving or anything like that. But a cop pulled up behind me and followed me for a while. And I was scared. And I think that, like, there was some again, I don't want to sound too Kyle Howardy, but there's some trauma there. It's like that authority figure at any moment can turn on me and then I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be arrested. And where did that idea come from? Like, I didn't grow up with that idea, right? That the cop was just going to one day just flip the script and just beat me, into submission and all this stuff. Where did that idea come from? See, that's the thing you got to think about. Like, that idea came from all of these stories that I've heard and seen on TV of cops doing exactly that. Had I not heard those stories, I would never have said, well, that cop's going to, pull me over and beat me. You know what I mean? Like I got that from somewhere. There's a narrative that even though I fight against it, because I don't think anyone would say that I follow the narrative of police brutality the way to the letter, right? To the letter of way I'm supposed to. I don't think anyone would say that about me. In fact, I often fight against that. But still, there's something in the narrative, though I know it's a false narrative, though I know it's unreasonable to think that the cop behind me is going to be the one to flip the script and then beat me to a bloody pulp. I know how unreasonable that is. I know how rare that is. And yet, somehow that narrative has still had an effect on me. And I think this is intentional. Here's a quotation from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but a Russian guy. And I've seen this shared many times and all of that. And I think it's very valid because this is we can see how this has gone on in the last year. Here's the quote. It says this: "We know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know that we know that they are lying. We know that they know that we know they are lying, and still they continue to lie." Why do they do this? Why do they continue to lie? Well, they continue to lie because it works. You see what I'm saying? Like, I know the narrative about cops, randomly beating people to a bloody pulp is a false narrative. Like, I know that you probably have a better chance of being struck by lightning than you do being beat up by a cop, for no reason, right? I understand that the facts bear that out, and yet somehow I've bought the narrative that when I see a cop pull up behind me, I must fear. And that's, I think, intentional. That's an intentional narrative that though I know it's not true, I know it's a lie, they lie often enough that I still can internalize it. And I think that's the point. There are a lot of mental prisons that we find ourselves in. And though we might not be in all of them, there are others that we are in. Let me give you a perfect example, right? So I don't fall for the COVID mental prison, right? Okay, that's fine. This is not like because I have a big brain and I'm just that smart that I don't fall for the COVID thing, right? Because I fall for other narratives, and there's fear narratives everywhere, right? There's fear narratives everywhere. Okay, let's just say for a second that the conservatives are less immune or less susceptible to the COVID virus narrative, right? Okay, fine. But we're very immune to the narrative that we're going to be all put in gulags. You see, that's the thing. Like, a lot of us are like, I've seen so much gulag talk, and even to some degree, I buy into some of that gulag talk, even though I fight against it because I realize that's unreasonable to be fearing this gulag thing. And we'll be like, what do you mean? People have done it before. Okay. I know that's what you've been told. People have done it before. We've got the Nazis rounding up the Jews and all that kind of stuff. We've got the Russians. You got to fear Russia as well. And so we know that that trauma of those historical stories we've been told, now we have to fear being put in the gulag as well. You see, they're always going after this fear narrative, right? This fear narrative, and it's like, it's like you got to be careful with that, because there are some things that you should legitimately fear, but there are other things that if you fear and it changes your behavior to such a degree that you're actually no longer being faithful to God, who is the one we should fear, then you've got to really take a good look in the mirror. And even if it is 100% accurate, like even if the narratives of the gulags and stuff like that are 100% accurate, which I think is very preposterous to believe that everything you've been told about the gulag, everything you've been told about the Holocaust, everything you've been told about Hiroshima, like I think it's preposterous to think that everything you've been told is true. But let's just say all was true, right? You cannot let that fear take the wheel and steer. Yeah. Isn't that a song? Incubus. Yeah, it's an Incubus song. Anyway, like that's the thing. Like you can't let these fear narratives control you. Like even if everything you heard about police beating up people like hotcakes was true, again, I think it's preposterous to believe that everything you've heard is true. But let's just say it was for a second. You cannot let that affect you to such a degree that now you're living in fear. You're just living in fear constantly all the time, and that's all there is to it. I think you need to examine the areas where you fear. Why am I talking about this? Well, because we're in a mental prison right now as a church. And a lot of us in the church are seeing through the COVID narrative. A lot of us in the church are seeing through the preposterous, false idea that the government can tell us what to do as a church. That's a lie. It doesn't come from the scripture. It doesn't come from nature. It doesn't come from anywhere. But so many of us are falling into this lie that it's actually affecting our behavior to such a degree that we're abandoning our brothers and sisters in Christ. I'm talking, of course, about what's going on in Canada, right? So they've seized the church. They're not going to let anyone in the church, right? And this is, personally, I think the reaction for Canadians everywhere should be this. Every Canadian church should open their doors Sunday, and sing unto the Lord, no masks, no nothing, just open your church. If you're going to arrest us, you're going to have to arrest a lot of us. You're going to have to get to the point where that PR campaign is not in your favor anymore. You're going to be the Western country that started rounding up Christians like hotcakes. Guess what I think would happen? Nothing. They would do nothing. If every Canadian church opened up and worshiped God on Sunday to get that pastor, that James Coates, back, because because they got him isolated, right? They're going to go and abuse James Coates. They're going to abuse the isolated church. They can do that to one person, but let's see them do it to an entire nation of churches. They won't do anything. They won't do anything because they don't have the power to do it. They just want you to think they have the power to do it. And by the way, even if they had the power to do it, fine. Let's let them try it, because we answer to another authority. We answer to God. We appeal to heaven. So though you kill the body, which you won't do jack because you don't have the power to do it and you don't have the balls to do it, you won't do anything. But even if you did, okay, kill the body. What can man do to me? I answer to God. I answer to God. I'm going to live forever. I have eternal life. I have his approval. So you can kill the body, but you cannot destroy me for the long term. In fact, you're going to have to answer to God for your actions, and you're going to end up being destroyed. You can't win this, Canada. You simply cannot win this. So if you're going to arrest one of us, you're going to have to arrest us all. See, that's what the response ought to be, because here's the reality. You would not only be getting your brothers back, but also you'd be obeying God. You can't go wrong by obeying God. Worship on Sunday. That's what God has commanded. Go to church, sing unto the Lord, do the elements, preach the gospel. That's how you obey Christ on Sunday. And if you did that, I think God would bless it. Plus, Canada just wants you to think that they're in control. Yeah, they can be in control of James Coates and his one church. But try a nation of churches. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't do anything. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter. It would be just like the three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It would be just like those three guys. What did they say to the king? He said, look, you're going to worship this statue, and if you don't worship this statue, I'm going to throw you in the furnace. And what did the three brothers say? My kids know this story, man. My kids know this story. They said, let it be known, king, we're not worshiping your stupid statue. So throw us in the fire. God's going to save us. And even if he doesn't, we're still not going to worship your stupid statue. That's how you do it, Canada. That's how you do it. And by the way, Americans should do this too. Every American church should be open tomorrow to get that brothers back, man. Those are our neighbors in the north, man. Those are our neighbors. That's who is my neighbor? That brother up there is our neighbor. Get his back. Open up your church. You're obeying Christ. God will save you. And even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter because we don't worship the government of the United States or Canada. We worship God. We obey him regardless. That's how you get his back. But you see, this is the thing. They've got us in this mental prison, right? They've got us in this mental prison that actually, no. They're the ones actually in charge, not God. They're the ones in charge. And they have the authority and the guts and the ability to round us all up and to kill us all. They actually don't have that authority. They don't have that ability. And they just want you to. Let me give you a perfect example. You ever see the movie Ants? This is how they get you in that mental prison. You've seen this movie, right? It's a community of ants, and they are terrorized by the grasshoppers, right? And the grasshoppers are these big, scary-looking bugs, and they come and they steal the ants' food every year, or I think that they demand an offering or something, and then they steal the ants' food every year, and then all of a sudden one of the ants goes, Let's stop doing this. Why are we giving these guys our food? This is our food. We worked hard for it. And the ants outnumber the grasshoppers like 1,000 to 1. And there's even a scene where the grasshoppers are talking amongst themselves, and they're talking. We got to make an example of this one ant that keeps disrespecting us, because the minute they get the idea that they can actually win, and we don't have this power over them, even though we are bigger, we look scarier, they outnumber us 1,000 to 1. They can easily destroy us if they got it in their head that they could. They could easily destroy us. And so the ants were in this mental prison where they couldn't defeat the grasshoppers. They were just too powerful. But the grasshoppers knew that they had to make an example of the small ant, the one ant, because the minute the ants work together, they're totally screwed. And it's the same thing here. I'm not saying go after the government. I'm not saying take up arms. I'm not saying any kind of revolution. What I am saying, though, is do the easy thing and just obey Christ. I'm not talking about taking up arms against the Canadian government. What I am saying is we're going to church, Canada. We're going to open. We're going to sing. We're going to do all that we're supposed to do unto God. And, you do what you have to do. You're not going to do anything. And even if you did, we're still going to obey God rather than men. This is exactly what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did. Don't fall into this mental prison of extreme fear, extreme despair because of the things you learned in social studies when you were a kid. Chances are some of that stuff isn't even true, and even if it were true, it doesn't give you any excuse not to obey God. The fact that they've got an atomic bomb that could blow you to kingdom come does not give you an excuse to not worship God. The fact that there have been gulags in the past, and there could be gulags in the future, does not give you an excuse to not worship God. The fact that James Coates got his church seized does not give any Canadian an excuse to not worship God on Sunday. In fact, I would argue that it insists, it forces your hand. You must open your church on Sunday. Get that brother's back. If they're going to arrest him for worshiping God, let them arrest the rest of us as well. Arrest the rest of us as well. That's how you handle situations like this. Get out of that mental slavery that they have you in. It's just like these grasshoppers. They look scary. There's a bunch of them, but there's way more of us. Plus, our God, this is not from the Grasshoppers movie, our God is more powerful than them. So when Nebuchadnezzar tells you to bow down to the statue when you hear the music, tell him to go fly a kite. Tell him to go pound sand. Tell him, listen, God will save me from your stupid furnace, but even if he doesn't, I'm still not going to obey you. I'm still not going to bow down to your ridiculous statue and have fun being the king of a pagan nation that's going to be destroyed by God. Anyway, good luck with all that. That's how you handle this stuff, man. You got to get out of this mental slavery. I'm in it to some degree. You're in it to some degree. Don't be so foolish to think that you see everything clearly and all that kind of stuff. This is why you must know what God expects of you. You must know what God commands, because if you know that kind of stuff, despite the mental slavery, you can be laser focused on what God requires of you, what God's law says for you to do, and you'll be safe if you're doing that stuff, right? God will protect you, and even if he doesn't, God's got your back, man. Let's get James Coates back this Sunday. Open up your church, and that's really the only message I have for you today. Open up your church. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless. Don't forget to tune in next week on Thursday for AD on the Fight Laugh Feast Network.